All right, so in the back of the first page, we're going to talk about end behavior. And end behavior is basically just figuring out the directions that the arrows are pointing at the ends. All right, and so this is some notation that you might see like on the EOC. I don't particularly like this notation, but the first part of it says as x approaches negative infinity. So that's going to be the left side of the graph. And so when it's asking you as x approaches negative infinity, it's telling you to figure out which direction the left arrow is pointing. And so it's either going to be pointing towards positive infinity or negative infinity. So what do you guys think about the left arrow on this one? Negative infinity. All right, and then as x approaches positive infinity, we're on the back of the first page. As x approaches positive infinity is going to be the right side of the graph. And so when you look at the right side of the graph, that arrow is pointing up. So f of x is approaching infinity. All right, so let's look at the next one. So x approaches negative infinity is this is the left side. On the left side, my arrow is pointing up. So the function is approaching positive infinity. All right, and then this is the right side. And again, the right arrow is also pointing up, so that's going to be positive infinity. All right. So let's flip over to number 3. All right, so for here, this is the left side. The left arrow is pointing up, so that's going to be positive infinity. And then the right side, the right arrow is pointing down, so it's going to be negative infinity. All right, so you guys try 4 and 5 on your own. If you can't find your packet and you need another one, do you need another one? You need another one? Okay, so on number 4, the left side and the right side are both pointing down. So that means these are both negative infinities. And then for number 5, the left side is pointing down, so it's negative infinity here. The right side is pointing up, so it's positive infinity here. All right, so this is what you do if you have the graph and you're deciding the end behavior. But we also need to be able to decide the end behavior when we just have like the function. And so skip a couple of pages to this page that just says end behavior pattern. All right, so I'm just going to look at these equations and I'm going to decide the right side on each of these. And then I want you guys to see if you can figure out the pattern. All right, I'm going to go back and highlight what I was actually looking at whenever I decided those. So do you see some kind of relationship between what I highlighted and if I did positive or negative infinity? What is it? It's negative infinity, right? And if it's positive, right? So in this table, that number, the very first number that you see in the function, is called the leading coefficient, and it tells you what happens on the right side. So if that number is positive, on the right side, it's going to be going to positive infinity. If that number is negative, on the right side, it's going to go to negative infinity. So in this little table, I'm just going to draw arrows. So I'm just going to draw the right arrows for now. So positive leading coefficient means on the right, we're going to be pointing upward. And the negative leading coefficient means on the right, we're going to be pointing downward. Okay. Whoa. Then we need a way to figure out the left. So I'm gonna write down the lefts of each of these and see if you guys can figure it out. I'm gonna highlight what I was looking at. This one's a little harder to see the pattern. It's not an 8, it's an infinity. So on 1 and 2, they matched, right? And then on 3 and 4, they were opposites. And then on 5 and 6, they matched again. So do you see a relationship in what I highlighted and that happening? It's harder to see. If that largest exponent is called the degree, if it's even, the left will be the same as the right. So this was even, 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 even. They're the same. If it's odd, then the left is going to be opposite of the right. So the degree is going to tell you the left side. If the degree is even, it's the same as the right side. And if the degree is odd, it's going to be opposite. So odd, opposite. Start with the same letters. One way to help remember. Okay, so on this table, this is saying there's an even degree, and so the left side is going to match with the right side. All right, and then on this, they have an odd degree, so the left side is going to point in the opposite direction of the right side. Okay. So what we're going to do on this table, we're not going to do all, some of this table is going to be for your homework, but some of it we're going to do together. We're going to go ahead and write down what the degree is and what the leading coefficient is, and then we're going to decide on the arrows. So the degree is always the largest exponent. So if there's not an exponent, like it's x to what power? The first. So on this first one, the degree is 1. And then the leading coefficient is the number in front of that x that had the largest exponent. So our leading coefficient is going to be negative 5. Okay, the leading coefficient is going to tell you what happens on the right side. So because it's a negative leading coefficient, on the right side I know I have an arrow pointing down. And the degree tells you what's happening on the left. So 1 is an odd number, so the left is going to be the opposite. opposite direction. Okay, let's look at number 8. So on number 8, the largest exponent is a 2, so that is the degree. Right? And then the number in front of that is going to be 12, so that's the leading coefficient. And 12 is positive, so I know the right side is pointing up. And then 2 is even, so what does it mean the left side is going to do? Point up, the same, good. Okay. Let's look at number 9. So the degree is the largest exponent, that's 3. The leading coefficient is -1. The leading coefficient tells you the right side is going to be down. And then is the left side going to be the same or opposite? Opposite. Very good. Okay, we're going to do one more of these together, and we're going to do one more thing. Oh, no, actually 2 more things. So I'm going to go ahead and write the words. They should have done this on the notes, but that's okay. So that first one is where you write the degree. The second one is the leading coefficient. We'll abbreviate it. And then the last one is the end behavior. Okay, so we're looking at the degree is going to be 4. The leading coefficient is that number in the front, which is -3. All right. So since the leading coefficient is negative, I know the right is pointing down. And then the degree is even. So the left, is also pointing down. Okay. So this is going to be part of your assignment. Another thing that I'm going to want you guys to be able to do is what we're doing on 15 and 16, which is deciding if the leading coefficient is positive or negative, and then deciding if the degree is even or odd. So let's start with the leading coefficient. Yes. So to make that determination, you look at the right side. If the right side is down, then the leading coefficient is negative. So you can put a negative sign, or you can write out negative, whatever you want to do. Right? And then the degree, we have to decide if it's even or odd. What do y'all think? Even. If the left points the same as the right, is even. All right, you guys try 16 on your own, please. So for the leading coefficient, we're looking at the right side. It's pointing upward. So what do you think? Positive. And then the degree, we see is the left same or opposite? Opposite. So that means it means odd. So degree, or the leading coefficient, we're thinking positive or negative. Degree, we're thinking even or odd. Y'all okay? Okay. All right, we're going to do a couple of these together. So what we have is the end behavior. And we're trying to decide which ones of these functions would have that end behavior. And so this part right here is the left side. So the left side is going to be pointing down. Left side negative infinity means on the left we're going to point down. X approaches positive infinity to the right side. The right, we're also going to be pointing down. So if the right is pointing down, what does it tell you about the leading coefficient? Positive or negative? If the right is pointing down. Negative. So the leading coefficient is negative because the right is down. And then the left is also down. What does it tell you about the degree? Even or odd? Even. Same direction is going to be even. So what we do is we just go through this. We're just going to go through this list of functions and check all the ones that the leading coefficient is negative and the degree is even. Looks like there's only going to be 2 answers. Those are the 2 that have that in behavior. Okay. We're going to do 18 together also. Okay, so x approaches negative infinity is the left side. The left side is going to point down. X approaches positive infinity to the right side. The right side is going to point up. Okay, so I know the right side tells me the leading coefficient and vice versa. So if the right side is pointing up, the leading coefficient is positive. The left side is in the opposite direction. The degree is odd. So we just go through those lists of functions and see which ones have an odd degree and a positive leading coefficient. Looks like it's only going to be those 2. Okay. All right. 19 and 20 are going to be part of your assignment for today. All right. And then I want to get started on number 1 and 2, but I'll let you finish it on your own. So if you turn to the next page, it's the page that's your homework page. So number 1 wants us to do 3 things. A says describe the end behavior. So what they want is for you to say as x approaches negative infinity, f of x approaches, and as x approaches positive infinity, f of x approaches. This is like what we were doing in the very first part of today's lesson. So negative infinity is the left side. This left side's pointing down, so that's going to be negative infinity. And then x approaches positive infinity is the right side. That arrow is pointing up, so it's positive. All right, and then b is going to be the degree, even or odd. And then c is going to be the leading coefficient, positive or negative. Right, and then on 3 and 4, it asks you to use proper notation, which is just what we wrote. I don't care about proper notation, if I'm being honest with you. So if you've already done this, some people worked ahead in my other class, it's fine. But when you do these, you can just draw the arrows. Unless you want to write out as x approaches, it's up to you. So what I want you guys to do is just finish the packet. So anything in your packet that's not answered, get it all done today. Hopefully it's just a little bit of this end behavior stuff. If you have some stuff to go back and do that too. So on each of these graphs, you're just going to do this middle part that we haven't done yet. And then go back and do the notes we didn't finish. Say that again. B and C will either be B will either be even or odd, and C will either be positive or negative. I wrote it over here. I might have just wrote it too small, or maybe you can't read my handwriting. I don't know. Yes. So when you guys do 3 and 4, I'm fine with you just doing what we did here. This part of it. That's fine.